Hi everyone, this is Alec from AJ Farms. So in last week's video I showed you how to prune your tomatoes, and this week's video I'm going to show you how to clone or propagate your tomatoes from cuttings. Now what this means is instead of starting your plants from seeds and waiting for those to grow, you're going to take a piece of the tomato, stick it in water or soil, and then let that grow on for a little bit to get some roots, and either pot it up or put it in soil. So I'm going to show you how to get these cuttings out again one more time, and then I will show you how to do it. Alright, so I didn't think this through and did not bring the tripod out with me, so I'm going to try to get this. So if you can see, this branch right here is growing out of an armpit or a little cross section of this tomato. I'm going to go ahead and clip that and stick it in my cup of water that I have right here, which is just labeled tomato cuttings because I'm not too worried about which varieties I get cuttings from. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a few. With my handy dandy happy snips, and I'll be back in a minute. Now this cutting is actually perfect because, as you can see, this stem bit is a few inches long, and this down here is where it's going to be growing roots from. So you want that to be a good few inches long because it also means it's going to be a little bit more sturdy and a little bit more viable. I will show you what happens when they can be a little too short later in the video. So if you happen to get a cutting or a sucker that has some flowers on it, that's not a problem. You just want to trim those off so that way that the plant will focus on producing roots instead of trying to grow fruit when there's no roots and it doesn't really have a good system to support that. And if your cutting happens to have some bugs on it, like a few of mine did, you can go ahead and rinse those off very, very well. Just be cautious. You will probably have to re-rinse your plants every few days to make sure the bugs don't take too much of a hold on them. So now we're back inside with our tomato cuttings, and there's a little bit of preparation you need to do before you let these start to propagate or start to let them grow roots. The first thing is, since they no longer have the support of the host or the mother plant, you want to reduce the stress on them as much as possible. So with this cutting, what I'm going to do is detangle it from the rest. You actually want to get rid of most of the leaves, so you will go ahead and just pinch off some of the bottom leaves, leaving only the top few sets. Now this one, not sure if you're going to be able to see, has flower buds on it, so I'm going to take those off as well. Just pinch these out right where they start. I don't want those to open up. And now I have a cutting that is perfectly prepared to propagate. So I will get another cup to put the finished ones in, and I'll show you what that looks like when I'm done. So now the cuttings are all cleaned up. They've all been reduced to just a few sets of leaves, and I've taken all of the flowers off of them. And most of the bugs, I see one more that need to get off. But what you're going to do at this point is let them sit in a cool shaded spot. Not too cold, like not the refrigerator or anything, just out on your kitchen countertops, something like that, where they're not going to get too much direct sun. A little bit of indirect sun is fine. These plants are very sensitive now, so you don't want to give them too much sun or they will scorch, so don't leave these outside. Another note is you also want to change the water every day to every other day at max, so that the water doesn't get stale and stagnant, and that could cause some issues with the plants. Now, I'm going to show you what happens when your cutting is a little too small or you leave it in the water for a little bit too long, because your goal is to get these wonderful, healthy looking roots. But what you don't want to see is when the plant gets a rotten spot like this. Let's see if I can focus on that a little bit better. There we go. You don't want to see a rotten spot like this because this cutting is no good. I left it in a little too long and it was a little too short. As you can see, it's about, 3 inches long or so. So this cutting was not destined to make it. So I'll be tossing this one out to make room for these cuttings, which should make it. And one other note about propagation is that it is not like with seed starting, it is not a 100% guarantee. Not every single cutting that you take will form roots or will transfer to soil well. Speaking of transferring to soil, you can plant these in soil, but I found that to be a little bit more difficult in terms of management because you need to make sure that the soil stays at a very, very consistently almost too wet. It'd be too wet for a normal plant, but because these plants have no roots, there's nothing quite to rot off. But it's managing whether did it make it, is it growing roots. It's easier for this method. But once you do have roots on your plant, this right here is a sun gold cherry cutting that I took with the other one that I just tossed out. This one was tall enough And it did make it and had roots, so I planted it deep in the soil and managed to take off some of the upper leaves. I probably did leave on a few too many leaves for it to support, but it's doing okay. I put this in soil yesterday, two days ago. So the leaves aren't drooping or anything. It is doing great. It suffered no transplant shock, which was amazing. And then the one big thing is, I do know this is a sun gold cherry tomato because I labeled it. So if you want to know what your cuttings are, it is a good idea to label them and keep the same types of things together. So like say if I had sun gold cherry tomatoes, and then I had beefsteak tomatoes, and then I had mortgage lifters, those 3 varieties would have their own cups. For the ones that I just did today, these 4 or 5, I'm not too concerned about it, so I'm just gonna have some mystery tomatoes, which would be pretty awesome. I'll know that they're slicing or cherry tomatoes, but beyond that, I'll have no clue. So it'll be a mystery when I either grow them myself or give them to a friend who might want a mystery tomato. But that is all that we have for you today. I hope you enjoyed watching. And if you want to follow us on Instagram for more updates, we are AJ Farms on Instagram. Other than that, we'll see you in the next video. So one thing I did forget to mention before the end of the video is that once you have your tomato cutting at this stage, you do want to keep it inside under grow lights for a few days, up to a week or 2, to let it grow some roots, make sure it's doing fine, and then slowly harden it off to go back outside. Because while these did originally start under the sun, the new growth and what's left is no longer used to being under such harsh conditions. So you want to gradually adjust it, make sure it's got a good root system. You'll definitely want to see roots poking out of the bottom of the cup before you try to take it outside. That way you know it has enough roots to sustain it through the hardening off process, gradually transition it to be outside, and then you'll have a happy tomato plant that you can either plant for yourself or give away to family and friends. Now that is all for this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.